My name is Serena Whitfield. I'm 29 years old, and I want to tell you about the morning my manager turned his computer monitor around and showed me security footage of my own mother sitting at the lobby bar of my hotel. The hotel where I work, where I have worked for 3 years, where I have built the only professional reputation that has ever been fully mine. Sitting there for 37 minutes the night before, writing fake reviews about me on her phone. 19 of them. 1 star each. All of them with my name in them. I want to tell you what it felt like to watch that footage. I want to tell you what it felt like to recognize the camel-colored blazer she was wearing, the leather bag she set on the bar, the way she holds her phone slightly tilted when she's typing something she considers important. I want to tell you what it felt like to watch her glance up at the front desk, the spot where I would have been standing if I'd been on that shift, hold the look for a few seconds, and then go back to her phone. She came in person first, to see if I was there. But before I get to that morning, I need to take you back, because none of it makes sense without the before. And the before is a long story, one I've been figuring out how to tell for most of my adult life. If you're already leaning in, if something about those first few sentences already feels familiar in a way you weren't expecting, go ahead and hit like, subscribe so you're here for everything that comes next, and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from and what time it is there. I genuinely want to know. I'll wait. Now let me take you back to the beginning. I grew up in Asheville, North Carolina, in a house that looked fine from the outside. It always looked fine from the outside. My mother, Diane, made sure of that. She was a real estate agent, which meant she understood instinctively that the presentation of a thing and the reality of a thing are two entirely different negotiations. And she applied that principle to our family with the same precision she applied to a listing. My father left when I was 6. I don't have a lot of memories of him, just a specific feeling, the particular quality of a room after someone has been in it and isn't anymore. My mother never talked about it directly. What she did instead was fill the space he left with performance. She joined the right committees. She kept the house immaculate. She wore the right clothes and knew the right people, and made sure that everyone in our community understood that Diane Whitfield was doing just fine, thank you, and her daughter was a reflection of that. That last part is the part that matters. I was not a person to my mother, not in the way I needed to be. I was a surface. I was the place where her success showed up in human form. When I did well, good grades, a solo in the school concert, winning that art competition in 5th grade, she didn't celebrate me. She received the credit. She would spend 20 minutes on the phone with a neighbor, describing how I had inherited her eye for color, her discipline, her way with details. I would stand in the hallway and listen and understand, at whatever age I was, that the achievement had just been reassigned. And when I didn't perform, when I was tired or sad or struggling with something, or just being 11 years old and difficult in the way 11-year-olds are, the house got very quiet. Not cold exactly, just absent. Like the warmth was on a switch and I had just flipped it off. I learned to perform. I learned it the way children learn anything necessary for survival, completely and without question. I became the easy one, the low-maintenance one, the one who never made trouble. I believed for a very long time that this was my personality. I didn't understand until much later that it was my adaptation. If you've ever been the easy one, if you've ever been low maintenance not because you had no needs, but because you learned very early that your needs were inconvenient, I think you'll understand exactly what I mean. And if that's already sitting somewhere in your chest right now, I want to ask you to share this with someone who needs to hear it. Because we don't talk enough about what it actually costs to be the one who never asks for anything. I left for college at 18 on a partial academic scholarship and 2 jobs, a coffee shop on weekday mornings and a catering company on weekends. I paid for the rest myself. I graduated with honors and $14,000 in student debt, which I am proud of in the way you are proud of something that almost broke you and didn't. My mother came to my graduation. She wore a cream dress and took photographs and told everyone around her that she had sacrificed so much to give me this opportunity. She said it loud enough that I could hear her from 10 feet away. I remember looking down at my hands while she was talking. These small hands that had carried catering trays for 4 years, that had counted tips at 11 p.m., and then studied until 1 a.m., and thinking, she genuinely believes that. She's not performing right now. She actually believes it. That was the first time I understood that my mother's relationship with reality was not dishonest, exactly. It was selective. She saw the version of events that placed her at the center, and she saw it completely, without question. That's a different thing than lying. And in some ways, it's harder to deal with. Priya was there that day. She had graduated 2 weeks earlier. She's a graphic designer, lives 12 minutes from my apartment now, has known me since we were 19 years old and sharing a campus laundry room at midnight. She didn't say anything when my mother finished her speech to the strangers in the folding chairs. She just handed me a paper cup of terrible graduation day coffee and stood next to me. That's the whole thing about Priya. She doesn't fix. She just stays. My mother shook Priya's hand at the ceremony and immediately, without pausing, looked past her to see who else she knew in the crowd. Priya caught my eye over my mother's shoulder. She didn't make a face. She didn't need to. We already had a whole language for moments like that, built over 4 years of late nights and borrowed textbooks and me explaining over and over why I couldn't just tell my mother what I needed. Because she'll make it about her, I always said. I know, Priya always said. She never pushed me further than that. Not then. I moved to Charlotte right after graduation for a job at the Caldwell, a boutique hotel in the city, 94 rooms, the kind of place where people come for anniversaries and business travel and the occasional elopement. I started as a front desk associate. I got promoted to front office supervisor 14 months ago after 3 years of doing every single thing I said I would do, and several things I hadn't been asked to do yet. My manager, Douglas Hale, is the kind of person who does not give you compliments unless they are accurate. So when he told me during my performance review that I was the most reliable person on his staff, I held on to it. Not in the desperate way I used to hold on to approval when I was younger. In the steady way. The way you hold something that is simply true and belongs to you. I was building something. It was slow, and it was mine, and it was real. And then I told my mother I wasn't coming home for the holidays. I had told her before that I needed space. Softer versions of it, spread over 18 months. The kind of language you use when you're still trying to protect someone from the full weight of what you mean. But 3 weeks before everything happened, I said it clearly for the first time. I said I needed distance. I said the holidays weren't going to work this year. I said I needed her to hear that without making it a negotiation. She didn't respond. Not that day, not the next. Just silence. I had heard her silences my entire life. I knew they weren't empty. They were full. Full of whatever she was deciding. I knew something was coming. I just did not predict what form it would take. 11 days later, my manager called me into his office. He set a tablet in front of me, and I looked at 19 one-star reviews of the hotel where I work, all posted between 10 at night and 2 in the morning, all mentioning me by name, all written in the particular syntax of a woman who had called my professional manner cold since I was 14 years old. I sat in that chair and I felt something I had felt before, just once, the day I heard her on the phone taking credit for my art award. That specific quiet, like something finally making sense in a way that costs you something. I knew before he showed me anything else, but I hadn't seen the footage yet. The reviews kept coming in while I sat there. Douglas had the management dashboard open on his screen, and I could see the notification counter ticking upward in the corner. 20, 21. Each one a small, precise strike. Each one with my name in it. He gave me time to read through them. All of them. I did it carefully, the way I do everything at work. Methodically, without showing what was happening underneath. Dismissive. Unwelcoming. Doesn't represent Southern hospitality. I've stayed at dozens of hotels, and this woman should not be in a customer-facing role. That last phrase appeared in 4 separate reviews, worded almost identically, 4 times, like she had typed it once and then liked it enough to use it again. I set the tablet down on his desk. "Have you had any unresolved guest complaints in the last 30 days?" Douglas asked. His voice was careful, not accusatory. Careful, the way a careful man sounds when he already suspects something and is giving you the chance to fill it in yourself. "Nothing logged," I said. "Nothing even approaching a situation that would generate this kind of response. Any personal situation that might be connected?" And here it is. The moment I had been half preparing for my entire adult life without knowing it. The moment when my mother's world and my world were in the same room, and I had to choose which one to protect. I could have said no. It would have been easy. Plausible. I could have said, "I can't imagine who would do this." and let him spend the next 2 weeks chasing IP addresses while I quietly called her and gave her the chance to talk herself out of it. That is what I would have done 2 years ago. 3 years ago, definitely. The version of me who was still the easy one, the low-maintenance one, the one who absorbed damage and redistributed it as composure. But I have a rule. I've had it since the day I started at the Caldwell, and it's never moved. I will not lie to my employer. Not for anyone. Not for any reason. Not even to protect someone I love from what they've done. My mother lives in Asheville, I said. We've been in a difficult place for about 1.5 years. 3 weeks ago, I told her I wasn't coming home for the holidays and that I needed space. She didn't respond to that. And then this started. The room was very quiet. Through the window behind Douglas's desk, I could see the lobby, the breakfast crowd moving through, a family checking out, my colleague at the front desk handling the queue with the kind of smooth efficiency I had trained him toward. Everything looked completely normal from in here. Everything always looks normal from a distance. I want to show you something, Douglas said. I think about that sentence a lot, the particular weight of it. I want to show you something. Not, I need to ask you something, or I have to tell you something, but show. He already had the evidence. He had already looked. He had protected me by finding it before he called me in, so that this conversation would never have to be one where my word was all I had. He turned the monitor around. I want to stop here for a second because I think about who watches these videos and why. I think about the people who click on something like this at 11 at night, or during a lunch break, or in a parked car in a lot somewhere. And I think about what brings someone to a story like mine. And I have to ask you directly, right now, have you ever been in a situation where someone who was supposed to love you used something institutional against you? A job, a reputation, a community, a school? Use something you built and cared about as the place to hit you because they knew it would land? Drop it in the comments. Tell me what that was. I read every single one, and I mean that in the most literal sense. I sit with them. Because this is not a story I'm telling into empty space. The footage on that monitor was from the lobby bar camera. Timestamp: November 13th, 8:47 p.m. The night before the reviews began. She walks in through the front entrance in the camel blazer I have seen 100 times. The leather bag on her arm, her highlighted hair blow-dried smooth the way she has worn it for 15 years. She moves through the lobby the way she moves through every room, with the particular confidence of a woman who has always known how to look like she belongs somewhere. She sits at the bar. The bartender, I checked his shift log later, brings her a sparkling water. She sets her phone on the bar and she begins to type. She types for 37 minutes. And at one point, this is the part I watched twice, the part I keep coming back to, she looks up. She turns her head toward the front desk, toward the spot where I stand every day. She holds it for a few seconds, just looking at where I would have been if I had been on that shift, and then she turns back to her phone. She came in person first, to see if I was there, to look at the place where I work, maybe to see my face, maybe to confirm something for herself before she started. I don't know what she was thinking in that moment. I genuinely don't know. But I have thought about it almost every day since, and what I keep arriving at is this. She needed to make it real. She needed to stand in my world before she tried to take it apart. She was never in the system, Douglas said. She didn't check in, she's not a guest. No, I said. She was just looking. He nodded slowly. He didn't push me to say more than that. He told me the IP address cluster on the reviews traced back to an Asheville area provider. He told me he had already initiated the dispute process with Google. He told me his legal team would be handling documentation. And then he said the thing I was not prepared for, the thing that sat in my chest for the rest of that day like a warm weight. Your employment and your record here are not in question, Serena. I want to be direct about that. I've watched you work here for 3 years. I know what I have in you. This doesn't change that. He paused. What you do with the personal situation is entirely your business, but I thought you should see what I saw. I held it together in his office. I thanked him. I went back to the front desk and I finished my shift. All 4 remaining hours of it. Because that's what I do. I solve problems before anyone knows they exist. I keep moving. I keep the surface still. It wasn't until I got to my car in the parking garage at 6:14 p.m. that I sat for 11 minutes without driving anywhere. I called Priya on the way home. I told her everything in order: the reviews, the office, the footage, the blazer, the 37 minutes. I told it without editorializing because I didn't have editorializing left in me. I was empty of everything except the facts. When I finished, there was a long pause. She went there in person, Priya said. She went in person. Serena. I know. She sat at the bar and wrote them in real time, while she was physically inside your hotel. I know. Another pause. Then, that's not a reaction. That's a campaign. And that word, campaign, cracked something open in me that I hadn't known was sealed. Because a reaction is something that happens in a moment of heat. A reaction is a slammed door or a sent text or a phone call made too late at night. A campaign is different. A campaign requires planning. A campaign requires you to think about what you want to destroy and then decide how to do it most efficiently. She had planned this. She had driven an hour and 40 minutes from Asheville to Charlotte, walked into my hotel, ordered a sparkling water, and spent 37 minutes writing detailed, specific, professionally damaging fake reviews about me, and then she had driven home. She wanted me to feel like my world could fall apart, I said, so I'd need her to put it back together. Priya didn't say anything for a moment. Have you always known she was capable of this? She asked, quietly, without judgment. I watched the Charlotte streetlights moving past my window. I thought about the graduation, about the art competition, about all the silences that came before all the performances, about a 6-year-old version of me learning to be easy because easy was the only thing that kept the warmth on. I think I've known for a long time that she was capable of something like this, I said. I just kept deciding not to know it. I got home and I sat on my kitchen floor for a while. Not crying. I wasn't at crying yet. Just sitting. I have a small kitchen in my Noda apartment. Yellow walls, a window that faces west and gets the last of the afternoon light. I sat on the floor with my back against the cabinets, and I looked at the place where the light had been and wasn't anymore. Priya showed up 40 minutes later with wine and Thai food and a mustard yellow sweatshirt she'd clearly just grabbed on her way out the door. She sat on the floor next to me. She didn't ask if I was okay. She knows better than to ask me that. What are you going to do? She said eventually. I don't know yet, I said, but I know what I'm not going to do. She waited. I'm not going to call her and give her a chance to explain it into something else. Priya nodded slowly. She'll make it about her, I said. She always makes it about her, Priya said. And then my phone lit up on the kitchen floor between us. The screen showed my mother's name. She was calling at 9:47 p.m., the way she always calls, as if nothing has happened, as if there is no particular reason for the timing, as if she just happened to think of me. I looked at the screen until it stopped. I wasn't ready yet. But I was getting there. 3 days passed. I went to work. I ran my shifts the way I always run them. Precise, calm, present. I restocked the keycard station before anyone asked. I handled a double booking situation on the second morning without raising my voice or my heart rate, at least not visibly. I smiled at guests and meant it, mostly, because that's not a performance for me. I genuinely like people, genuinely like the small, careful work of making someone feel welcomed somewhere. That part of the job has always been real. But underneath all of it, in the part of me that wasn't running checklists and managing the breakfast queue, something was very still. Not calm. Still. The way water goes still before it freezes. The reviews were being disputed. Douglas had the legal team handling it, the platform's verification process had been initiated, and 11 of the 19 had already been flagged for removal. The Caldwell's aggregate rating sat at 4.3. Before that night, it had been 4.7. 0.4 of a point doesn't sound like much until you understand that in the boutique hotel business, 0.4 of a point is the difference between the booking that goes to you and the booking that goes to the property 2 miles away. It matters. She knew it would matter. I don't know how she knew that. She's a real estate agent, not a hospitality professional. But the specificity of what she targeted told me she had done some research. She had looked into what would actually hurt. That's the part that kept circling back. The research, the preparation, The hour and 40-minute drive. Priya called every evening that week. Not to talk about it necessarily. Sometimes we just talked the way we always have, jumping between topics, letting things land or not land. But on the third night, she said something that I couldn't put down afterward. "You know what I keep thinking about?" she said. "I keep thinking about the fact that she looked up, at the front desk, before she went back to her phone." "I know," I said. "What do you think she was feeling in that moment?" I didn't answer right away. "I think she was looking for me," I said finally. "Not to stop, just to look. Like she needed to see the shape of my life before she, I don't know, before she did what she came to do." Priya was quiet. "That's the saddest thing you've said so far," she said. She wasn't wrong. On the fourth day, my mother called again. Same time of night, same pattern, as if the calls were spaced to appear casual, as if she were simply a mother who happened to think of her daughter in the evenings. I watched the phone. I let it ring. And then I picked it up. Not because I was ready, because I understood that waiting for ready was another version of the same avoidance I had practiced my whole life. I had spent 30 years waiting until it felt safe to say the true thing to my mother. It never felt safe. It was never going to feel safe. Safe was not something she made room for. "Hi," she said, like it was any Wednesday. "Hi," I said. She asked if I'd thought any more about the holidays. She mentioned that the Hendersons down the street had asked about me. She said she'd made the butternut squash soup I used to like in November, that she had put some in the freezer in case I changed my mind about coming home. Her voice was warm, practiced. She was performing normalcy the way she always performs it, with enough genuine detail that it's almost convincing. I let her finish. Then I said, "Mom, I know you came to the hotel." Silence. Not her usual silence, not the loaded, strategic kind. This one had a different texture entirely. This was the silence of someone who has been moving in the dark and just heard a light switch. "I know about the reviews," I said. "I know you sat at the bar and wrote them while you were there. I know there were 19 of them. My manager has the security camera footage." She didn't say my name. She didn't say, "What are you talking about?" or "That's not true," or any of the things I might have expected. She said very quietly, "Serena, and then she stopped. And I said what I had been arranging very carefully in my mind for 4 days. "I'm not calling to fight with you. I'm not calling to give you a chance to explain it. I'm calling to tell you that I understand what happened. You wanted me to feel like my world could fall apart, so I'd need you to help put it back together. I get it. I even understand why you thought that would work." I breathed once. It didn't. And I can't keep doing this. She said my name then. Just my name. And there was something in the way she said it. Not manipulative, not performing, just the sound of someone who has made a very large mistake and is only now, in this moment, beginning to feel the full weight of it. "I know," I said. "I know, Mom." And I said goodbye. And I hung up. I sat on the edge of my bed for a long time after that. I want to be honest about what I felt because I think people expect these moments to feel like victory, and they almost never do. I didn't feel victorious. I didn't feel relieved, not exactly. I felt tired in a way that went all the way down, the kind of tired that isn't about sleep, the kind that lives in the part of you that has been holding a posture for decades and has finally, in this one moment, been given permission to put it down. And underneath the tiredness, very quietly, something else. Something small and unfamiliar that I didn't have a word for yet. If you have ever had to say a true thing to someone who raised you, someone you love, someone who hurt you, someone who is both of those things at the same time, and you have felt that particular exhaustion afterward, that specific, complicated quiet, I want you to know that I see it. Hit that like button if this is sitting somewhere real for you right now, and subscribe so you're here when I tell you what happened next. Because what happened next is the part that changed something in me permanently. The reviews came down over the following 10 days. 11 removed by Google's policy team. 8 disputed through the platform's verification process. All of them tied to the same account cluster originating from Asheville. The Caldwell's rating climbed back toward 4.6 within 3 weeks. On the strength of real reviews from real guests. People who had actually slept in those rooms and eaten that breakfast, and been helped by me and my team in the ways that we actually help people. Douglas put a formal memo in my personnel file. He documented the incident, the investigation, the findings, and explicitly cleared me of any professional liability. Then he printed a copy and handed it to me across his desk. "For your records," he said. I folded it in thirds. I put it in the filing drawer in my apartment where I keep the documents that prove I exist. My lease, my car registration, my college diploma, my promotion letter from 14 months ago. The things that are real and mine and cannot be rewritten by someone else's version of events. That night, I told Priya about the memo and she said, "Good, now it's a document." "Now it's a document," I said. She understood what I meant. Everything my mother had tried to make subjective, my professionalism, my character, my competence, the question of whether I deserved to be where I was now a documented, verified, institutionally confirmed fact. There was a piece of paper in a filing drawer in Charlotte, North Carolina that said, "Serena Whitfield was seen clearly. Serena Whitfield was found to be exactly who she said she was. You cannot take that back. You cannot reframe it. It exists." I want to tell you about the week after the memo, because this is the part that doesn't fit neatly into the story I had been telling myself about my mother for most of my life. I had always told myself, in the private, half-conscious way you tell yourself necessary things, that she did what she did because she didn't think about the consequences, that it was impulsive, that she was hurt and she acted from the hurt without thinking it through. But I kept coming back to the research, the preparation, the drive, and I started to think about what it actually takes to do what she did. Not emotionally. I understood the emotional logic, or thought I did. But practically. She had to look up the hotel. She had to drive there. She had to walk in and order something and sit long enough not to look suspicious. She had to think about which review platforms would do the most damage to a hospitality business. She had to think about what language to use. Southern hospitality? Customer-facing role? Professional language, the kind that sounds like it comes from someone with standing. She had to think about volume. 19 reviews, not 3. Enough to move the aggregate number. She thought about all of that. She planned all of that. And then I thought about what she has been carrying this past year. The property investment that went sideways, the $40,000 she lost, the retirement savings that are thinner than she will ever admit to anyone, the house in Asheville that is too big for one person, the real estate career that has slowed down, the way she calls me in the evenings like someone reaching for something they can't quite name. I don't say this to excuse her. I want to be very clear about that. What she did was deliberate and damaging, and there is no version of her story that makes it acceptable. But I started to understand that the thing driving it wasn't malice in the pure sense. It wasn't cruelty for cruelty's sake. It was fear. Specifically, the fear of being left. Of being the one who gets left behind. My father left her with a 6-year-old and no plan. And then he was gone. And 30 years later, her daughter told her she needed space. I don't think she consciously connected those two things. I don't think she sat in Asheville and thought, "This feels like Gary leaving." But I think her body knew. I think something in her responded to my absence the way it had responded the first time someone important walked out, with a desperate, disproportionate need to make herself necessary again. She didn't know how to say, "I am terrified of being alone and I don't know how to ask you to stay." She had never learned that language. So she said it the only way she knew. By creating a problem only she could solve, in a world she was not supposed to be able to touch. Sitting with that didn't make me feel better, exactly. It made me feel something more complicated than better. It made me feel the grief of it. Real grief, not anger dressed up as grief. For the mother she might have been. For the daughter I might have been able to be. For all the years we spent circling each other in a dynamic neither of us chose and both of us fed. I was sitting with all of that on a Tuesday evening in my apartment, the west-facing window going orange with the last of the November light, when my phone buzzed with a text from Douglas. It said, "Wanted to let you know, AGM track conversation is back on the table when you're ready. No rush. Just didn't want you to think last month changed anything." I looked at that text for a long time. Then I looked at the light in my window. Then I put my phone face down on the table and I let myself feel, very quietly, the thing I hadn't had words for since the night I hung up on my mother. It was something beginning to settle. I applied for the AGM track in January. I didn't tell anyone right away, not even Priya. I filled out the internal application on a Sunday morning at my kitchen table with coffee going cold beside me and the city still quiet outside, and I submitted it before I could talk myself into waiting for a better moment. There is no better moment. There is just the moment you decide to stop waiting for one. Douglas wrote my recommendation himself. He didn't tell me what he said in it, and I didn't ask. Some things you have to trust without reading them first. The weeks after the call with my mother settled into something I can only describe as new. Not better in the simple sense, not easier, not lighter in the way people mean when they say a weight has been lifted. It was more like the air pressure had changed, like something that had been pushing against me from a direction I couldn't quite locate had simply stopped. I didn't feel free, exactly. I felt like I was learning what free was going to feel like once I got used to it. Priya noticed before I said anything. "You seem different," she said one evening. We were on her couch, laptops open, doing the specific kind of companionable nothing that only works with people you've known for a decade. "Different how?" She thought about it. "Like you're not bracing anymore." I didn't say anything for a moment. Then, "I think that's right. Are you okay?" "I think I'm going to be. I think that's actually different from being okay right now." She nodded like that made complete sense because to her it did. Because she has been watching me brace against my own life for 9 years, and she understood better than I did what the unbracing was going to look like. My mother didn't call again after that Wednesday. Not for 6 weeks. The silence was different from her previous silences. Those had always felt like pressure, like something accumulating. This one felt like distance. Real distance. The geographical and emotional kind. The kind that happens when someone finally understands that the door they've been standing in front of has actually closed. I heard about her through the one person who still called from that world, my mother's neighbor, a woman named Patricia who had known our family since I was small, who called me every few months out of a loyalty I had never fully understood, but had always been quietly grateful for. Patricia was 67, retired, kept a garden that took up most of her backyard, and had the particular quality of some older Southern women of saying the most devastating things in the most gentle possible voice. She called on a Thursday afternoon while I was on my lunch break. "I wanted you to know," she said, after the pleasantries, "that people are talking." I sat down on the bench outside the hotel entrance. The November air had sharpened into something almost cold. "What are they saying?" "Well," a pause, "the reviews came down, which people noticed. And your mother, I don't know how, but word got around about what happened. You know how it gets around." I did know. Asheville is a city, but it has small-town bones in certain neighborhoods. Word moves through particular networks the way water finds its level. "She's had some hard conversations," Patricia said carefully. "A few of her clients, some of the committee people. I think she thought, I don't know what she thought. I don't think she thought it would come back the way it did." "Is she okay?" I asked, and I meant it. I want to be clear that I meant it, not as a performance of concern, not as the automatic response of a well-trained daughter. I genuinely wanted to know if she was okay. "She's managing," Patricia said. "You know your mother. She's always managing." I knew my mother. She was always managing. She had been managing since my father left, and she remade herself from the ground up through sheer, stubborn, capable will. That part of her was real. That part of her I had always respected, even when the rest of it was hurting me. "I'm not going to call her," I said. "Not yet. Maybe not for a while." "I know," Patricia said. "I'm not asking you to." A brief pause. "I just thought you should know that the truth found its own way. You didn't have to do anything." The truth found its own way. I sat with that on the bench outside my hotel, the cold air moving through the street, the sounds of Charlotte mid-afternoon all around me. A couple walked past with a rolling suitcase. A delivery driver double-parked and jogged toward the entrance. Everything ordinary, everything continuing. The world running exactly the way the world runs, regardless of what any particular person is going through. The truth found its own way. I didn't have to do anything except tell Douglas the truth in his office, which I had done because of a rule I made for myself years ago and never broke. That was the whole thing. I told the truth. The cameras had already recorded it, and the rest had taken care of itself. I finished my lunch break. I went back inside. I stood at the front desk and I did my job. There is something I want to say about work specifically, because I think it gets misunderstood in stories like this. People sometimes talk about work the way they talk about a consolation prize. Like if you have your career, that's what's left after the personal stuff falls apart. But my work was never a consolation. It was the first place I ever chose myself. The scholarship and the 2 jobs got me through college, but the Caldwell was the first place I walked into as an adult and decided, on my own terms, that this was where I was going to put my effort. Nobody guided me here. Nobody called in a favor for me. I found the listing, I prepared for the interview, I showed up, and I did the work. When my mother tried to take it from me, she wasn't just attacking my livelihood. She was attacking the specific thing that proved I existed outside of her. And when it survived, when Douglas put that memo in my file and the reviews came down and the rating climbed back up, it wasn't just professional relief. It was something more fundamental. It was the confirmation that the life I had built was real and solid and mine, and that it could not be dissolved by someone else's narrative about who I was. I want you to sit with that for a second. If you've ever built something on your own, something that cost you real time and real effort and real sacrifice, and had someone try to take it apart. Because I think that specific violation, the one where someone reaches into the life you made with your own hands and tries to unmake it, is one of the cruelest things one person can do to another. And I think it happens more than we talk about. I think it happens in families especially, where people sometimes believe that love gives them access to everything you are, including the parts you built without them. If that's your story too, leave it in the comments. Tell me what it was. Tell me what you built and what someone tried to do to it and whether it survived. I'll be there. About 2 months after everything happened, one of my front desk colleagues, a 23-year-old named James, who had been with us for 8 months and who reminded me occasionally of the version of myself that first walked into this hotel, asked me something during a slow afternoon. "How do you stay so calm?" he said. "Like, when things go wrong, how do you just not react?" I thought about it honestly. Not the professional answer, the real one. "I react," I said. "I just do it in the parking garage." He laughed, thinking I was joking. I wasn't entirely joking. What I do, what I have always done, is find a physical space and impose order on it. When I am overwhelmed, I reorganize. Supply closets, desk drawers, the checkout queue. I take something external and make it orderly because I cannot always make the internal orderly on demand. It's not a perfect system, but it's mine and it works, and understanding it as a coping mechanism rather than just a personality trait was one of the more useful things I did in therapy, which I finally started in February, 4 months after everything happened, because Priya had been suggesting it for 2 years and I had finally run out of reasons to wait. My therapist's name is Dr. Anita Reyes. She is 43, direct in the specific way of someone who has heard a lot of things and is not easily surprised by the range of what people do to each other. In our 3rd session, she said something that I wrote down and kept. She said, "The goal isn't to stop loving her. The goal is to stop organizing your life around managing the consequences of her choices." I wrote it on a piece of paper and put it in the filing drawer, next to the memo, next to the lease and the diploma and the promotion letter. My mother called on a Sunday in late February, 7 weeks after the Wednesday call. I let it ring twice and then I answered. She didn't perform normalcy this time. That was different. She just said, "I need to say something." "Okay," I said. "What I did was wrong." A long pause. "I don't have a good explanation for it. I have reasons, but they're not good enough. And I'm not calling to ask you to forgive me right now because I don't think that's fair to ask." Another pause. "I just needed you to hear me say it clearly. That it was wrong. That I know it was wrong." I sat with that for a moment. "I hear you," I said. "That's all I needed," she said, and she hung up first, which was new. I don't know what our relationship looks like from here. I want to be honest about that because I think the clean resolution, the tearful reconciliation, the lesson fully learned, the mother transformed, is not my story, at least not yet, and maybe not ever, and I have made a separate peace with that uncertainty. What I know is that she said it clearly, without dressing it up, without making it about her pain. She said, "It was wrong. I know it was wrong." That's not nothing. It is also not everything, and I have stopped needing it to be everything in order to be enough. I wrote her a letter the week after that call. I wrote it by hand, which I almost never do, because I wanted it to be slow. I wanted each word to cost me the right amount of attention. I didn't write it to repair anything or to draw a line or to win a point. I wrote it because I had things to say that I had never said in a form that couldn't be interrupted or redirected or absorbed into her narrative before I finished saying them. I told her that I understood, better now than I ever had before, what it had cost her when my father left. I told her that I saw the strength it took to rebuild the way she did, that this part of her was real, and I had always respected it, even when I couldn't say so. I told her that I also needed her to understand what it had cost me to be her proof of concept, to be the surface where her success showed up in human form. I told her that I had spent most of my life trying to earn something from her that was never going to be given the way I needed it to be given, and that understanding that was one of the harder things I had ever had to do, and that I had done it. And then I wrote the line that I had been working toward, without knowing it, for about 20 years. I am not the extension of your life. I am the beginning of my own. I read it to Priya over the phone the night I finished it. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Send it." So I did. I'm Serena Whitfield. I'm 29 years old, and on a Tuesday evening in April, I drove home from work through the Noda streets with the windows down for the first time since October, the city smelling like rain that had just finished and something green beginning. And I thought about my mother, not with anger and not with longing, but with something that felt, for the first time, like ordinary sadness. The kind that doesn't require anything from you. The kind that simply is what it is and asks only to be felt. I parked. I sat in my car for a moment, not 11 minutes this time, just a moment. Then I went upstairs. I made dinner. I opened the window that faces west, and I let the evening come in. The filing drawer is still there. The memo is still in it. The letter I sent my mother has a copy in there too now, next to everything else that is real and mine and true. Before you go, I want to ask you something. Not about my mother exactly, about yours, or your father, or whoever it was that you loved and who found a way to reach into something you built and try to take it apart, because they confused loving you with owning you. Has someone ever done that to you? And if they have, did it survive? Did you survive? Leave it in the comments. Tell me what that was like. Tell me where you are now. I read every single one, and I mean that the way I mean everything I've said here, completely, without performance. If this story stayed with you, if any part of it felt like something you needed to hear today, please like this video. Subscribe so you're here for the next one. And share it with someone who is in the middle of their own version of this. Someone who is still waiting to feel like their life is fully theirs. Because it will be. I promise you it will be. I'll see you in the next one.